All right. So that was about the first 4 months. Then my phone started ringing off the hook. I thought, okay, that was good. Nothing really happening now. These draft papers are out. I can coast for a little bit. And the Jentel case comes out. I'm like, whoa, Dave, did you see this? Oh my God, the shred program's over. End of story. What really happened here? So I thought, okay, I better read this case. And at the start of it, you'd say, wow, I can't believe this guy lost this SR&ED claim. He sounds like the kind of client who's apparently doing some good stuff. And then I read it a little more, and I said, you know what? This guy's the typical claim who could have had a great SR&ED claim, but just didn't document their issues and activities correctly. And reading through all the facts of the situation, I said, you know, I kind of side with the CRA now. I don't think these guys really had a claim. Maybe they could have had a claim if they'd done it properly, but I think the ruling was fairly just. So in the Jentel case, what happened was the company basically had this rack of bins, plastic bins that you could pull in and out, and they wanted to develop them and make them better. So they had an activity where they redesigned the bin front and back panels, the stands, the sliders, the divider portions. Nothing really super high tech, but potentially eligible. The judge went through it and he said, well, is this SR&ED or not? CRA took the position there's no technological advancement. So as soon as you open that one, now you've got to go through the whole project. What's the technological advancement? And what I said is, I said, well, here's the facts on page 2 of your handouts of what they told the judge that they've done. And that in reality, it's just not enough. It's what they developed and what they did, but there's really no evidence of experimentation that I can see hypothesis and conclusion. On page 4 of the newsletter, and I realize this is somewhat small, I said, let's take the Jentel case and do a what-if analysis. So I'm going to just take the facts that they told the judge. I'm saying, well, you haven't really told me much. If I interpret it this way, it's in. But if I interpret it another way, it's out. And you haven't given me enough information to really skew it in your favor. So the first part is, how did you benchmark the existing technology? They don't really tell us. Like, how did you know that the solution to whatever, molding or fabricating, wasn't already readily available? If they just said, well, you know, we just had a gut feel that there was nothing out there, so we started doing it, well, you haven't defined standard practice. If they went in and said, well, I have 7 different articles on plastic molding problems and why there's certain issues here and why we can't form it, and certain experts talking about the expected technological problems, I think that would be a good project. But I'm pretty sure they were more the former, not the latter. Okay? They talk about the objectives here. Well, we got to make the bins and we got to fit it in the sliders. I don't really know if there's any experimentation at all from what they've told me. But if they talk about what I call stack-up tolerances, hey, we've got to do this and meet this kind of tip strength, certain load, price points, what you get is a series of objectives that create what I call stack-up issues or stack-up tolerances. Hey, with unlimited time and money, we know we can make this, but can we make it for $100 a unit instead of $150? Can we do various things and still meet the performance criteria? Well, maybe it's in. So I'm saying if their objectives consider different configurations, maybe for structural integrity or designs or industrial designs and related materials, well, that would be more indicative of a project that would be in. If they look at plastic melting conditions and the process conditions and how to achieve the objectives, if they consider things like, what if we put additives or reagents in our mix before we mold the stuff? Now we're starting into the experimental area. But there's no evidence that they did any of this. So again, I tell people, look, the judge had to decide on the facts that were provided. At first, it looks like these guys had engineers and they did different iterations. But in reality, they didn't really tell us what they've done. As far as the uncertainty, they didn't really tell us. Did they look at different formulations? Did they experiment in any way? They say they tested alternatives. If they would have come in and said, well, you know, we did a matrix of what we think the variables are for the plastic, and we tested different temperatures and loads and reagents and additions and mix times and melt temperatures and a combination of things where we change one factor and see the effect, and what I would call a test matrix. we have a series of variables where we understand the changes and effects of one or more variables on the upstream or downstream processes, then we would have system uncertainty. Again, I didn't see any of this on what they submitted. So as I go more and more into the case, I'm thinking they just took basically some shelving units, changed it a little bit to look better, and put some new ones together. I don't see any experiment in a field of science or technology, as opposed to style changes or aesthetics. So the actual activities here are now where I'd focus. Here's what they told us that what we've actually done. Here's how it would not qualify, and here's how maybe that same thing would qualify. I don't know. So they're saying we tested various molding conditions. What the heck does that mean? I tested various molding conditions. I'm saying, well, if you tried 3 methods, they told us they tried 3 methods on similar parts, but maybe just, hey, this part worked, this part didn't work, this part worked. So there's what they call trial and error investigation. We try 3 different parts, we pick the one that works, and we go on. That's what I call results. The conclusion that follows the result is the technological advancement. Why did part 1 outperform parts 2 and 3? Was it the durometer of the part? Was it some special characteristic that I was unsure of? If so, again, that's more indicative of the experimental process. But I don't really see any hypothesis here. If I saw a thing that said, hey, we tried 180 samples, we modified back pressure, temperature mix, profile, mix time, anything like that, and concluded why any one of those was better than the other, that would be an eligible project. So again, when the judge basically has things like, I tried 8 different types of plastics. This is where I say, oh, hey, that's positive. You experiment with 8 different types of plastics. Why didn't they get that then? That seems to be experimental development. If you tried 8 different types of plastics, says number 2 is the best, let's go with that. That's just a result. You don't understand why. You have no technological advancement. You don't understand why the HDPE plastic outperforms polyethylene or any of the others. What you need here is the conclusion. So why do I think, you don't have to be right, why do I think or even hypothesize that this particular material is outperforming the others in a manner that I didn't appreciate at the outset? And then they talk about tested 2 plastics, thickness versus strength. But again, not enough details. So I'm saying, was it just a result? Hey, this plastic's better? Or was there actually experimental development? So you tested the thickness versus the strengths versus the effect on part design, cooling time, humidity, extrusion temperatures to mold it, either the forming process or the deployment process, or how to cut it. I mean, anything like that that's experimental could be in. And again, when I read what they've told us, I'm saying it's a little bit alarming. 8 different plastic materials, experimentation, but I'm going to guess the claimant didn't keep good records. They didn't really keep a test matrix. I'm guessing because we don't know. They didn't supply it. And they really didn't evaluate why something worked to provide a conclusion. And I would propose the conclusion is the technological advancement. A result without a conclusion is just that. You almost made it to the finish line, but you didn't quite make it there. You almost had a SR&ED project. But until you have a conclusion, why did this result happen? Not the result happened. I'll have to leave it to someone else to figure that out. I'm going to try to figure out why that result happened. Then you'd have the technological advancement. And the more I read the Jentel case, the less I think the client prepared any real evidence of experimentation. So I didn't feel too bad about reading it.
Now, the evidence you find, is that evidence from the original client or evidence gathered during the review?
The left-hand column is what they provided to the judge in court as evidence that they think they did experimental development, that they tried 8 alternative plastics. And to me, that's a positive indicator. But I'm saying it's not proof. It's really just that. It needs more detail, and that's where they didn't provide it. So it's alarming at first, but if you really dig into the question, I think you feel, yeah, client could have taken a little further.
The web would just like you to try it, if you can, to repeat back the question if they're not here.
Sorry.
Okay?
Yep. All right. Yes.
This may be what they put in their T661, but when CRA came out to do the interview or the review, they may well have had all that other stuff.
I'm talking what they submitted at the Tax Court of Canada level, right? Like, I'm reading that. This is a case from the Tax Court of Canada. If they didn't provide it at the Tax Court,
So this stuff didn't
it's too late.
anywhere, even at the company.
They couldn't provide it at the Tax Court of Canada level, so it's lost. Reality, they didn't do it. I mean, you and I know that. Okay.
My recollection of this is that the judge said something to the effect that you tried injection molding technology to do this. Injection molding technology has been around for a long time, therefore it's standard practice. And that's what scares people.
That scared a lot of people, and the judge did make some comments on that. You know what, let me revisit that issue when I talk about the Globe and Mail articles in the next one, because, yeah, I have some issues with I have numerous issues with that whole concept. Yes?
You made a statement that, if they couldn't produce the evidence, then they probably didn't really do the work. I'm not sure if I would agree with that, because I've talked to a lot of new clients who will explain their work in this way, but then if I start asking them the right questions, I get enough information that I can figure out what is the technological advancement in terms that they understand. I'm not just putting words in their mouth.
I completely agree. That's kind of what I was saying in my, if you said this.
Eligible work here, they just didn't have someone preparing it in a way that the CRA couldn't, or the tax court. They didn't express the technological advancement.
I think that's kind of what I'm saying here. If you would have said this, you're out. If you would have said something like this, then you could be back in. So that's really the implication I'd say. Be careful to not just rely on the fact that you looked at 8 alternatives, I'm guaranteed to be in. No, that's a great indicator. And it's unnerving that someone didn't get it, but it's not, just because you looked at 8 alternatives is not proof that you did SR&ED. There's still a little more to it.
I thought CRS stated if you haven't described your project adequately, but if they suspect that you're doing SR&ED, they will seek more information.
Yeah, I guess what we're saying is by the time you get to the Tax Court of Canada level, you've gone through the CRA, 30-day, second opinion, objection. You've had 6 opportunities to provide any evidence that you have. I'm assuming you haven't provided it yet. You aren't ever going to provide that, right? If you can't provide it at the 6th review Tax Court of Canada, this is your last chance. All right. Any other issues on Jentel before we move on? I know that we could probably spend a whole course on just that one. It's pretty exciting.